Martha, Karua, good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you here.
My pleasure to be. Thanks for having me.
Asante sana.
Yes.
The Proverb City, we've been in the Maghreb in the last this is the fourth week.
This is the fourth and final country of the Maghreb that we are going to mine Proverbs from, and we're in the state of Libya.
Mm-hmm.
This country is historically rich. Okay? It's gone through the steps that very many of these countries have gone through. It was even a kingdom once.
Where?
Yeah, but that one came to an abrupt end when a gentleman called Muammar Gaddafi enacted a coup. Yes, that's a story for another day. Other proverb. He whose trousers are made of dry grass should not warm himself at the fire.
What's the interpretation of this?
I think it's an equivalent of those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. And I can see a certain leader, and I'll not go beyond that, whose trousers are made of dry, did you say dry grass?
I did.
And has been warming himself near the fire in our national politics. I go no further.
Kitamramba. Martha, yesterday you, activist Khalef Khalifa, Muhisa Kitui, CJ Emeritus, Dr. Mutunga, Professor Mutunga, and Kabando Akabando addressed a media conference with a long statement. And the thrust of it was basically just saying that things are not going right.
Yeah.
What is this?
It looks like Dr. Ruto has suspended the constitution without saying so. We cannot be having abductions by state agencies or by police officers or security officers not in uniform, who refuse to identify themselves, who refuse to say for what offense they are picking somebody, and who do not disclose where they are taking someone. I believe yesterday it is the fact that the social media went viral. That's the only reason they took Boni to Kamukunji. Otherwise, if they were taking him to a police station, why was it so difficult to say so at the point they picked him? Why was it difficult to say we are police officers, we are here for this and that offense? I believe if it were not for social media and for Kenyans and for the media generally, Bob Jagi and the Aslam brothers would not have been released, and we do not know what would have become of them. I know there are many other people being picked who do not have networks that can cry out for them, and some never return. We now know of the Pegulia gentleman whom they abducted. 1 week, he surfaced dead. We know of Gen Zs like Denzel Omondi, who was picked during the Gen Z protests and surfaced in a quarry dead. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights listed over 60 people, if you like, missing. We do not know whether their list and who else is missing. It could be in the hundreds. What have we become? A country that abducts, tortures and kills its own. A country that is having detention camps. And this is not in dispute. Remember, the Bob Jagi and the Aslam brothers clearly said where they were, there were many others. To date, police have never owned up that they're the ones who held them. And we know they are the ones. Look, the morning Masengeri is going to court under threat of being jailed because he's showing up, because there is a warrant to detain him, is the day they are released clandestinely. What government operates like that? If you cannot guarantee or rather respect people's right to life and guarantee their liberty other than, if you're picked within the law, then you do not deserve to be in power. This is a regime Kenyans must get ready to throw out. Yeah, and that can even be before 2027. I keep saying being in leadership or being elected is not a title deed. You cannot wave it at us, do everything, including commit murder, to remain in power. You can be fired any day. And William Ruto and his regime were fired in June. So they know they're using force and illegal means to remain in power.
Looking at it from a justice and constitutional point of view, I mean, it's good that you're here because you obviously occupied that position in the previous governmental administration. What is the rationale behind having somebody as a guest of the state, as it were, to ask them a few questions about their activities? What's the rationale behind that?
If indeed one has committed an offense, there is a legal framework within which one can be picked and questioned. But if you're being picked clandestinely, clearly it's not because you have committed an offense. It's because you are a thorn in the flesh of the administration, because you're seeking accountability. And therefore, what the illegalities mean is that the Ruto regime has a campaign of instilling fear and intimidating Kenyans and obliterating any contrary opinion.
Is it possible?
Look, for instance, at Boniface Mwangi. What had he called for? He had asked people to occupy the Stand Chat Marathon, not to do anything bad to it, but to go in national flags. When did it become an offense to don yourself in a national flag? So what incitement to do what? To do something positive? When we call for people to plant trees, is that incitement? If you're asking people to cause violence, that's different.
Yeah.
But if you're saying occupy with a national flag, what offense is that?
Is it possible that the executive then is unaware that individuals or trios or couples of people are being picked up and they do not know? Is it possible?
I believe they are not only aware, but I believe also this is sanctioned by William Ruto himself.
You know,
this has now become their signature way of operating. It is not once, it is not random, and it is tens of people who have been abducted, maybe hundreds. If you are in power and you suggest that those things are happening without you knowing, then obviously you are in slumber. You ought not to be there. But there is no way this can be happening without them.
The push for a new constitution was for, among other things, to make sure that there's no return of such. Right? People being abducted, people being picked up, people being held incommunicado. You know, there are laws that say that you must be presented in court within, right? 24 hours.
24 hours,
and police have got to come and justify and even request the courts if they want to hold you a bit longer. You've got to be charged. The whole journey towards bringing a new constitution was trying to make sure that such things never occur again.
Indeed.
It's only 14 years in a new constitution. This is happening now in this administration. In the previous administration, there were still other complaints. People, bodies turning up in Lydiah and elsewhere. People who just disappeared and they have not been seen again. Are we saying that our constitution actually created and left loopholes? Because there's been no constitutional accountability to the administration of Uhuru Kenyatta and the administration of William Ruto over the disappearance of people and the turning up of people dead, whether in Shakahola or in Lydiah or elsewhere.
I want to agree that this has been happening even during the previous administration. In the Kibaki administration, and that was before we passed the 2010 constitution, you remember there were extrajudicial killings of people, in quotes, seen as Mungiki. That was totally wrong. And I remember raising the issue within And eventually it's one of the issues. Human rights is one of the issues that caused my resignation. Human rights, corruption, and issues related to the administration of justice. In the Uhuru, Ruto, again, administration, because Ruto was a core part of that administration, bodies surfacing in Yala, and people being abducted, although not as widespread as now during the Ruto regime, but the bodies in Yala were quite a number. You remember Willie Kimani? You remember all those things. Now it is happening, and since the Gen Z riots with abandon, Ruto had said when campaigning that extrajudicial killings will be a thing of the past. In my heart, I was skeptic of those statements because the way I know him, I know he's a person who does not respect the rights of others. You cannot condone or be part of corruption and at the same time say you respect the rights of others, because corruption does affect the rights of others. So I suspected this would happen. It has happened. He is mum. He doesn't say anything. You remember the court trying to press the police to produce Bob Jaggi and the Langton brothers, and them completely refusing.
Yeah.
If you are the one in charge, even the Attorney General was silent. Only surfaces in court to try and plead for Masengeli.
Now that's why I'm asking, Martha.
So they owned the impunity. They have openly owned the impunity. What can you imagine? Kanja, the top police officer, the IG, pretending that he doesn't know what is happening? Then that is all the more reason then why he shouldn't be there at all.
Which is why, Martha, I'm falling back to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because we gave ourselves a Constitution that
no-
will safeguard us. Are we saying that there are no constitutional safeguards?
The Constitution
We created
has
institutions. We created a National Police Service and said there shall be a Policing Oversight Authority. There shall be a National Commission on Human Rights. With all these institutions and a Constitution that is so robust on the Bill of Rights, that is, acclaimed world over on the Bill of Rights. Are we saying that all those safeguards are actually not working?
May I thank you for this question because it helps us to unpackage what is happening. The Constitution has no fault on those areas. In fact, it entrenches the Bill of Rights and sets out the parameters in a very elaborate manner, and also says which rights are non-derogable. But a constitution is as good as the people who implement it. Our institutions are as good as people who sit in them. I was avoiding to say who man them. I was going to say who woman them. But who sit in them. Look at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. It is doing better than it has done before. It has a list of those who died. It has a list of those who disappeared. It is helping where necessary, but I want to call upon them to step up. Their work is not to massage the government. They are a constitutional commission appointed courtesy of the people of Kenya. They should be calling out the government more. They should have a more and firmer statement on the state of human rights, on the need to forthwith stop the abductions. They should call out the police service. They should call out Dr. William Ruto and his rogue government. They should call out all the institutions. They are doing that, but not enough. Look at our judiciary. The High Court, some courts are doing very well. A bit of the Court of Appeal, I will not go beyond that. They are doing very well in calling out the government, but they could do more. And I like to remind them, they are not appointed by William Ruto and his rogue regime. They are appointed by the people of Kenya. They should look at Article 159, which sets up the courts for onwards. And they should realize that whatever they do in the name of the people of Kenya who have donated power, judicial power to them, it must be done for the best interests of the people. If it is Adani, they should ask themselves, if the people of Kenya are opposed, is the decision we are making for the people of Kenya? If it is in the matter of human rights, and I want to commend the courts that have shown courage and spine in standing up for the people. You remember recently when they charged Morara, the court threw out the charges because they were fictitious. We commend the judiciary and we want to see more of that. We want to see them come out firm because they are the guardians of the Constitution. The Constitution is not at fault, but we Kenyans, we professionals, whether you are a police officer, whether you are in an office like IPOA, whatever office you hold, are you defending and upholding the Constitution of Kenya? If we answer that positively, then we'll have a better nation. And if you are a citizen, you too have a duty to uphold and defend the Constitution. We must say no to William Ruto and his rogue regime. We shall not be abducted again. We are not going to accept the violation of our rights, including trivializing the right to life.
So when these things happen, when masked, hooded people go and pick up people, take them and hold them in Communicado for days, and people don't know what has happened. When you have an MCA who's missing for so many months, when you have so many other names that are just of people who have disappeared, families that are looking for their loved ones, and the institutions are not doing much to bring those people back home. So what does that mean? What should we do? What safeguards? I'm asking about the safeguards because you're saying that this is the executive that is involved in this. So the executive, if the executive is at fault, we had other institutions that should be making sure that they check the executive. The legislature should. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights should. The judiciary should. The other institutions should. If all of these appear to be singing in concert on one side, and our brothers and sisters and cousins and nephews and nieces are turning up dead, disappearing, so what do we do?
Thank you. You've mentioned the legislature. We lost Parliament. We lost the National Assembly. We've lost the Senate. They like to call them the upper house, but they did not show any traits of an upper house when we last saw them debating the impeachment. And this is not about Gachagua. I couldn't care less whether he is in or out. But I care about justice to everyone, including him. If you can hold a shambolic show and attend almost 100%, and when it is issues affecting Kenyans, including issues about the right to life, liberty, issues that affect Kenyans, bread and butter issues and economic issues, we see Parliament not well attended, we see quorum hitches. Those are people who don't appear to know, except a very few of them. They don't appear to know at all why they're there. They think we elect them to fatten themselves and to go and expand their businesses. They do not realize that we have elected them to be our watchdogs. And I think that's why Kenyans, I do believe, actually sacked the entire lot. The entire lot was thrown out by people. And remember, in Kenya, we have people hold sovereignty. Our previous constitution, Parliament was supreme, and everything was about the presidency. Because we adopted the English system where everything is about the sovereign, who is the king or queen. In Kenya now, this constitution removed that system. The people are your employer. And I know that William Ruto has not in his mind internalized the constitution. I heard him after the Gen Z riots say, enough is enough. Who is he to tell his employers, the Kenyan people, enough is enough? It is only your employer who can tell you, enough is enough, pack and go. So in his head, he is a king. But I want to remind him today that he is a mere employee of the sovereign people of Kenya. And these people have no faith in him. If he respects himself and respect the people, he should exit. If you cannot further the interests of the people, then you should leave. Look at him even defending Adani. Adani didn't elect him. It is the people of Kenya. Unless if Adani is his mask and is the one behind all this haste at the airport at Ketrako. And by the way, the Ketrako deal is exaggerated. It's a rip-off. If you check similar deals before with the same agency. So he is defending them because he has an interest in them. That is what I deduce. Otherwise, he would be defending his employer, the people of Kenya.
Hi, Siti. You're keeping quiet as you're listening to Martha.
Yes, because as Martha was speaking, I was doing a little historical tour.
Okay.
And I was looking at governments that over the years have mirrored exactly what we're talking about here. I'm looking at the military regimes that were in Latin America. There's one particular one that was notorious. It was Chile under Augusto Pinochet. 3,162 people disappeared. To date, as we're speaking, 1,469 have not been accounted for. And those people disappeared over a period of 17 years. Meaning, that's where the disappearance and disappearing people, that's where the term came about. People visit in the morning, done. That's it. No one ever hears of you again. Now, there's a new president called Gabriel Boric. He's trying to sort this thing out. He's got a search plan, meaning many families never actually got to actually come to that position where at least now they are at peace with either the death of their loved one or they understand. Now, what hinders this president is the history of impunity that country had. Remember, many of the people who were disappearing others in that time of history were young men. They're now old. Some are in their 70s, some are in their 80s, many have died. Now, can you imagine this? I was reading of a story of one of these individuals whose grandchild now came to realize this beloved grandfather that they have was the person who was among the people who disappeared very, very many people. An ordinary citizen, a senior citizen now in the country, but he was among them. It takes my mind back to an even more horrific era. Second World War, the Nazi regime. 6 million people. 6. Now, these things start and they're exacerbated when people keep quiet.
Thank you.
When people don't say there's something wrong going here, or you think you will be exempted. The unfortunate thing is, once this thing gathers momentum, it leaves nobody out. You will utter what you think is actually quite normal, and the next thing, so-and-so has disappeared. It acquires its own life. Absolutely. And it becomes normal. I remember the question I always ask, do we understand what we're setting in motion? Now you see, this thing is already in motion.
It is.
There are no protests to speak of. People are being arrested. There's nothing incendiary in what is reported to have been said by Boniface Mwangi, but he's been arrested. So essentially, your arrest has nothing to do with what you've done, any law you've broken. Someone deciding that they decide that what you're doing amounts to something that is jailable, disappearable, or whatever it is.
Even as you say that, Siti, I get shivers down my spine because I do, and the incendiary nature of all of this is just making you realize that times in nations on this planet that is just the way things are done, that people are disappeared and nobody asks questions, But then I want from a constitutional point of view, Martha, when we think about the tenets of the Constitution and the ropes of the law that hold the country together. And I think about a young man. I mean, it's still picture emblazoned in my mind. His name is Mukuria. His mother is still looking for him to date. The last time she saw him was on the 25th of June. And his friends saw him being put into the back of a police vehicle, not a random vehicle, of a police vehicle. This was seen. There were pictures taken. Today is the 28th of October. She still does not know where her son is. And I think we need to call them by name when we can, and when we know them. if we take that and put it to the side just for a minute, coming back to what you've talked about, that it was very clear from the mouth of the president that we would no longer see things like this happen. The deputy president, whether he's the deputy president or former, like you said, we're neither here nor there, gave a personal account of what happened to him himself being taken from his home and the horrors that he felt. So now when we look at the presidency in the role as an executive, why would they say that these things would come to an end, but that we see it in higher numbers than what you've seen in the last 5 years? Why say it, but then allow it to happen as though you were unaware? Why would you do that?
Firstly, the KK administration came to power on a campaign of lies, of deceit, propagated by William Ruto and everybody behind him. That is why he can tell us, looking us straight in the eye, there will be no further abductions, and then the abductions triple. He has no regard for the people of Kenya. He believes we are fools and that we will do nothing. That is why the impunity is so much. Pushed by the Gen Z protests, he sacked cabinet. But he didn't quite sack them. He brought them back through the back door. And even those who appear new are appointees of those who left. The case of the education minister who was running mate to Machogu, the former education minister, the reports that Rinturi may have nominated the man who replaced him. Things like that. So they left and they didn't live. The fact that he said he will withdraw certain aspects of the finance bill, the fact that they are back, the fact that he ran down the NHIF has brought an animal called sheep and sha, which we do not know, and completely broken down people's health. These are people who have no regard absolutely for the people. And I'm telling Kenyans, you may sit comfortably in your house, in your business. This is coming to your door. If it's not you, it will be your loved one. We have a responsibility to stand together and say no, to reclaim our country. And to everyone, when we elect, always look for the background of the person. There was enough information to show that William Ruto and his team were not the right people. And I mean, check everybody, not just those who are asking for presidency. Check for your member of parliament. Never elect somebody because they are in a party. Elect them because you know about them. Your MCA. We are paying people highly, but we are getting no returns. Kenyans are on their own. It has reached the stage where we, the people, must take action. And I'm asking you, as a Kenyan, take action, even if it's just to say no. Where are our professional societies? I only see lawyers. I see a bit of doctors sometimes. Where are the architects? Where are the accountants? Where are other professionals? Where is the Attorney General of the Republic? You may have been appointed by Dr. William Ruto, but look at the Constitution. You work for the people of Kenya. Your power is donated by them. Where is the DPP? I'm mentioning Attorney General and DPP because both of them have power over the police. They could actually tell them, we will not represent you if you detain people for offenses that are bailable. For instance, why were they holding Bonnie yesterday? They could have bonded him and told him, meet us in court on Monday. The same thing, that's what we were asking for Morara. For the ordinary person, is it better to fill jails with the petty offenders or to take the particulars of the person and then bond them to come to court? And if they don't, through the administration, you will find them. So we will have to stand up. Those in offices, public offices with power, and those of us who are just civilians, we will have to stand together and say enough is enough. And there are many ways of doing so. We've got to put our minds together. We have to resist this regime. Kenyans have to unite to resist the oppression that is brought upon us.
Can I ask CT a question? When you talk about the times of Pinochet and where people would disappear,
Yes.
what does that do for state power? What does that do for state power? And I also think about Nigeria in times of Babangida and Abacha. And if you look at what happened with apartheid in South Africa, where two people were walking 2 by 2 and they would disappear, never to be seen again. What does that actually do for state power, whereby you have that kind of hold over people?
It's corrupting. It feeds into itself. But the problem is this. You see, state power is exercised by people. And the thing that is never considered is the damage it does to the so-called perpetrators. If you look carefully at the history of these things, these perpetrators are themselves victims. Because these abductors are Kenyans. They are people who have relatives just like the rest of us. They live here. They are people who began their lives with hopes and dreams, but this is now what they're doing. Believe me, it cannot unaffect you. It will. Let me answer the question in a different way. When you look at some of the things that are listed as the tenets that would need to be attained for someone to be impeached, whether it's a deputy president or the president, there's the word gross. Gross misconduct, gross violation, gross. Okay? Now, that's where you get to when this is what you do. You see, we may not even see it, but when you accommodate the things we've accommodated, when we welcomed our thieves, when we welcomed our people who we know to involve themselves in misdeeds, we've just desensitized ourselves more and more and more to the point where the 100 bob to the policeman is no longer an issue. It is an issue. It'll get to 1,000. Somebody's abducted. Oh, so-and-so is abducted. Okay. It's not okay. But we've gotten to a point, we are desensitized. So these things that actually you ought to shiver and shake and quake when you hear, we're saying, oh, now you ask the question, that is what happens to you. And the perpetrators are also emboldened because they keep getting away with it. So they think. You never actually do, but so they think. How do you become a country where there are international laws and then suddenly you hear nationals of another country have actually been abducted, because that's what it was, and they've been taken back to... All I'm saying is, this scenario that we're talking about, it's not something that's happening, it's not a one-off. No. It's become normal now. Now, that's the danger. It becomes normal.
Well, that's my worry. You know, when you say it's becoming normal, and it's becoming normal so fast and so soon within the life of a very robust constitution.
Yes.
In which, citizens participated in writing. Unlike the Lancaster one, where some guys went to the UK and they came back with a document. This one, people over a generation actually wrote their constitution.
They did.
Over years. Are we saying that we didn't internalize our constitution, Martha? Are we saying that, if these things can happen so quickly, that a woman, a neighbor, can lose her child, a child disappears, and the neighborhood just, my God, we go there, we visit her for 2 days. After that, we just get used to it. And then we start telling each other, mkionekana mkienda pale, you never know you're the one who could be picked next. And we just go back quietly. If 60 people can just suddenly disappear within a month, if 400 people can disappear and go and they end up in some farm in Shakahola, all these things, if people can actually disappear and bodies turn up in Rivayala,
or in a quarry somewhere.
It's an issue for a day or 2. Week is long. Then after that, it's forgotten. It's become normal now.
Is it that we didn't understand our constitution?
I think we do, but we have become careless with to whom we award responsibility. Instead of awarding our best, we award our worst. Because we really must go back to the drawing board. You want change? then you got to be part of that change. Part of that change is electing all the 6 representatives with a lot of, intentionally, because these are people who will push your agenda forward. It's also standing up to say no. What if on the 25th of June, when our youth were murdered, even if the fence of Parliament fell and people entered Parliament, it's their building. And I believe those who destroyed were not the protesters. These were thugs hired by either the regime or people connected with the regime to justify killing, which was a method chosen of stopping the protest. The fact that snipers were already on the roofs when people entered Parliament means there was preparation. And it may be very well that that wall that gave in was hit by that police lorry we saw next. So they breached Parliament themselves to trap the people in. People, yes, wanted to occupy Parliament, but they trapped them so that they are able to shoot, kill, and instill fear so that there are no more demonstrations. We've got to look these people in the eye and tell them no. I am glad that a section of religious leaders are coming back. I'm saying coming back because except for lone voices, the religious leaders had taken leave of being the moral guardians of society. They're slowly coming back. And it is a positive thing. I'm asking you as a Kenyan, slowly come back if you had taken leave, of being an engaged and active citizen. Let us all slowly converge and do something for ourselves, because this is our country. You may think that you can run and go to another country, but will you run with all your relatives? Your soul is here because you are connected to this place. We all need to do something about what is happening. We need to tell William Ruto and his people the state belongs to us. Everything done must be done in our best interest. And we must ask them to go. And that is what happens in democratic countries. That if people reject leaders overwhelmingly, they leave. And William Ruto knows he was rejected because what gauge did he use to know that he needed to do a kifumba macho by sending his cabinet home and then bringing it back, just in the same form? That kifumba macho he did because he could see the tide was against him. So he knows that he was rejected. And instead of improving, he has actually worsened. Are we going to accept the destruction of our nation? I have pledged to myself that I will stand up. And I'm calling upon everybody to stand up. We stand up, we be each other's keeper. We defend each other, we defend our constitution, we defend our country. And we make sure that only those who are responsible enough to do the bidding of their employer, who is the people of Kenya, ever get near to the offices of power and decision making.
What can people like you, Professor Wairimu Mutunga, who was among the founders of the Kenya Human Rights Commission, pushed for human rights in this country, for the entrenchment of the Bill of Rights in our constitution. You people who understand this constitution so well, you wrote it. How can you lead us into safeguarding and protecting the constitution?
Raising the voice and calling upon the people and coming together as Kenyans united to resist oppression, we gave that statement yesterday. That should encourage all those who are feeling this is wrong. It is a call to action that we need to step up for our country. And this is something we can continue doing. And it is not work that can be done by a few people. It's people standing in the spaces they occupy or saying the same thing. A people's revolution. The Narc administration was brought in by a people's revolution. The constitution was again a people's revolution, if you like, because it was a revolution on the way we should be governed. We must safeguard this. We have a beautiful country. We have enough resources for our needs, but we are sitting idle when they get abused. We are sitting idle when we are getting murdered, when we are getting abducted, when all our rights are violated. It's time to say to William Ruto and his rogue regime, enough is enough. And to remind him, don't you dare tell us enough is enough. You are just our employee and you stand fired.
Senior Counsel Martha Karua, party leader, Narc Kenya, has been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.